blood soaked her fingers before she even knew where it came from. The desert heat pressed against her skin like a burning iron. Each step toward the lonely cabin felt heavier than the last. She had run for hours through cactus and dust, chased by a few men who swore she was theirs to claim. Now her breath broke into shallow sobs. Every sound behind her felt like death riding closer. When she reached the door, she hit it with her fist. The sound was weak. Her voice trembled. "Help me, please." Then she collapsed, one knee on the dusty porch. Inside, a man looked up from his worn rifle. Elias McCrae, 51, a widowed rancher with a face carved by sun and silence. He had not seen another soul for days. Some men go weeks without a voice to answer back, and when they finally hear one, it changes everything. When he opened the door, the smell of blood hit first. Then came something else, a faint sweetness, orange blossom. The scent carried from the young woman's hair, mixing with the dry air and the leathery musk of his clothes. For a moment, it felt like two worlds breathing into each other. Her hand clutched her side, and the fabric dark with blood. She whispered, broken but clear, "I'm taking it off. Please, just make it quick." Her voice cracked on the last word. Eli froze. He had seen pain before. Gunfights, burns, and broken men, but never a woman this young. Shaken and half wild, standing in his doorway with blood streaking her thigh and fear in her eyes. He nodded, silent. She tore away the fabric just enough for him to see the wound at her hip. It was deep, but not mortal. He fetched whiskey, needle, and thread. He ran the needle through the flame, the way cowboys did when doctors were days away. He tore a strip of clean cloth for a bandage, tight enough to slow the bleeding, loose enough to let her breathe. His hands were rough, his breath steady, the smell of gun oil and saddle leather clinging to him. When the needle met her skin, she bit her lip to keep from crying out. Outside, the wind rattled the porch boards. The old hunting dog, Widow, growled low, her ears rising to the faint echo of hooves far down the wash. Eli glanced toward the sound, then back at the woman. Her pulse raced under his fingers. She smelled of fear and orange blossom. The blood kept seeping through the cloth. He muttered softly, "Who did this to you?" Her eyes flicked open, glassy and tired. "You wouldn't believe me if I told you." She winced. "But they're coming back." He looked at her, then at the open desert beyond the cabin door. Somewhere in that shimmering heat, riders were closing in. He tightened the last knot, wiped the sweat from his brow, and met her gaze. If he helped her, trouble would follow. If he turned her away, she would die before sundown. The air hung heavy, smelling of blood, gun oil, and orange blossom. He whispered almost to himself, "Who are you really, and what are you running from?" The night dropped fast on the desert. By the time Eli finished stitching her wound, the cabin smelled of whiskey, sweat, and something softer. That faint orange blossom still lingered in the air. He set the lantern low, its flame trembling like it feared to be seen. She sat quiet on the edge of the cot, his half closed. Widow lay at her feet, one ear twitching to the faraway sound of crickets. Eli poured a shot of whiskey, handed it over. "You drink." She shook her head. He smiled just a little. For a man like Eli, smiles were rare, like rain in July. Good. That means one less fool in the room. It was the first joke that broke the silence. Sometimes a small joke can carry more weight than a loaded gun, and maybe... The first moment she let out a real breath. He asked her name again. She said, "Nora Walsh." Her voice cracked when she said it, like the name itself hurt to speak. She didn't say where she was from or who chased her. But she looked at him, as if hoping he wouldn't ask more, and he didn't. He just nodded slow and said, "You'll be safe here tonight." The wind picked up, somewhere in the dark. An owl cried. Then came the sound that made his stomach tighten. Hooves. Not far now. Eli blew out the lantern and moved to the window. Dust drifted across the moonlight. 2 riders, maybe 3. The desert held its breath with them, waiting to see who would move first. He turned to Nora. Her hands gripped the blanket. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. He whispered, "If they see you here, you're done." She nodded, her eyes wide and glassy. The knock came soft first, then louder. Widow barked once, sharp and warning. Eli opened the door halfway. 2 lawmen stood there. badges dull in the lamplight from outside. They asked if he'd seen a young woman traveling alone, hair like chestnut under lamplight. Wounded on her side? Eli didn't blink. She's my wife, he said. The words came out calm, steady. It was a lie so clean. Even Widow went silent. The men looked past him, saw the shadow of Nora sitting in the dim light. 2 tin mugs sat on the table, and a shawl hung on the chair. Easy proof for any man looking for a wife in the room. One tipped his hat. Sorry to trouble you, Mr. McCrae. They rode off slow into the night. Eli shut the door and leaned against it, breathing hard. Nora stared at him, her voice trembling. You didn't have to do that. He looked at her, half smiling. Well, guess I just did. Outside, the wind carried away the hoofbeats. Inside, for the first time that night, she smiled, not from joy, but from something softer. Hope. Eli sat back down, poured another drink, and handed her the glass. Drink now, he said. She took it, her fingers brushing his. The scent of orange blossom rose again between them. And in that quiet, something began to change, but neither of them saw the shadow moving behind the barn. And it wasn't alone. The next morning, the desert woke slow. Eli stepped out onto the porch, rifle in hand, watching the sunlight crawl over the rocks. Widow trotted beside him, nose twitching at the faint trail of smoke in the distance. Behind him, Nora stood quiet, wrapped in his old blanket. The smell of orange blossom faint under the dust. He poured her coffee, black and strong. She sipped and winced. I used to drink tea, she said, trying to smile. He chuckled. Out here, tea don't last long. Coffee keeps you alive. Her laughter faded. She looked toward the river, eyes full of something heavy. They'll come again, she said. Eli nodded. He already knew. Trouble in these parts never rode alone. It always brought friends. He had seen the type before. Men who carried badges but wore evil in their eyes. That night, she told him the truth. She once worked at the copper mine in Bisbee. Her hands still carried the marks from the work, small cuts the desert never healed. When the owner's son tried to have his way and she fought back, they called her a thief, said she stole payroll money. Then they sent men to hunt her down. Eli's jaw tightened. He spat into the dirt. Some truths taste better after you spit the bad out. That ain't law. That's filth dressed up fancy. He spent the next day checking ammo, cleaning the rifle and oiling the saddle. The smell of leather and gun oil hung thick in the air. Widow followed him step for step, tail stiff, ears twitching. He tied a white cloth on the porch rail, one that used to belong to his late wife. A silent promise there would be no more running. That evening, clouds rolled in from the west. Thunder rumbled low, like the growl of something waking. Eli packed a small satchel with food, water, and extra bullets. He turned to Nora. When the time comes, we stand, not hide. She looked up at him, her face pale but strong. I'm not running again, she said. For the first time, he believed her. Later, they stood by the San Pedro River, the water dark and restless. Fireflies flickered around them. She reached out, touched his arm lightly. Why help me, Eli? He looked at her for a long moment. Guess I've been waiting a long time for something worth fighting for. The wind picked up. Widow barked once toward the ridge, sharp and sure. 3 riders appeared in the distance, just silhouettes against the lightening sky. Eli chambered around, slow and steady. The storm was coming, and so were they. Before the fight began, let me ask you something. If you were in Eli's boots, would you stand and fight or walk away? Take a deep breath, pour yourself a cup of tea, and tell me what time it is, where you're listening from. And if you'd like to ride along for the rest of this Wild West story, hit that subscribe button and stay with me. The storm broke over the desert just as the sun began to fall. The first drops hit warm dust and turned it to clay in seconds. Eli led Nora and Widow down the dry wash toward the old town of Charleston. Once it had been full of miners and gamblers. Now only broken walls and dust remained. The wind carried the smell of rain and gun oil. He could feel it. Trouble was close. Every storm in Arizona carries more than just rain. Some bring reckoning. They took cover inside the shell of an old saloon. The roof was half gone. Lightning flashed through the holes above, lighting Nora's face pale against the dark. Eli checked his rifle again. Widow stood alert by the doorway, tail stiff. Nora pressed her hand against her healing side. She tested her weight on the bad leg. The bandage held, pain sharp but steady. "I can fight," she said softly. Eli looked at her and smiled. "You just stay breathing. That'll be enough." Then came the sound they had waited for. Hooves, 3 riders cutting through the rain, shouting to each other. One of them called her name. The voice was cruel and cold. She froze for a heartbeat. Even the thunder stopped, like the sky itself was watching. Eli stepped closer, his boots sinking in the wet dust. "Stay low," he whispered. The first shot cracked through the storm. Glass exploded from the saloon window. Eli dropped behind a fallen beam, fired once, and one rider hit the ground hard. The echo rolled down the riverbed. The second man tried to circle behind. Widow ran out into the open, barking loud enough to draw fire. Eli used the distraction, aimed through the broken wall, and fired again. Another horse screamed and stumbled. The third rider fired wildly, bullets smashing into the doorway. Nora grabbed the small pistol from Eli's saddlebag and took aim with shaking hands. She squeezed the trigger once. She aimed for the largest shape, not the face, and luck met her courage. The gun kicked. The last rider dropped into the mud. For a moment, there was only the sound of rain. Eli lowered his rifle, breathing heavy. Widow limped back inside, fur wet, eyes bright. Nora sank down beside her, tears mixing with the rain on her cheeks. Eli looked at her, then out toward the ridge. The lightning faded. The storm began to ease. Justice had come, quiet and final. He walked to the doorway and stood watching the river rise. The smell of wet leather, smoke, and faint orange blossom hung in the air. Her chestnut hair clung to her temples, dusty and damp. He whispered more to himself than to her. "Guess we made it through," she smiled. "Weak but true." "For now," she said. Outside, thunder rolled one last time, but in that sound, there was something else, a question. When the sun comes back, will peace stay with them, or will the past find its way again? When the rain stopped, the world smelled new again. Eli and Nora rode back toward the cabin, the air cool and quiet after the storm. The smell of rain still hung on their clothes, heavy and sweet, like the memory of fear slowly fading. Nora looked back once at the road behind them, half expecting the ghosts of last night to still be there. The San Pedro River glistened under the fading light, and for the first time in a long while, Eli felt something close to peace. Widow trotted beside the horse, wet but proud. Nora reached down, stroked the dog's head. "She's brave," she said softly. Eli nodded. "Lost her old master a while back. Guess she knows what it's like to start over." Eli's eyes softened when he said it, and for a second, she saw the man he used to be before life got hard. Maybe that's what survival really means, learning to be kind again after the world's been cruel. Nora smiled at that. Maybe we all do. Back at the cabin, the sky turned gold over the grasslands. The scent of wet earth mixed with the faint orange blossom still clinging to Nora's hair. That smell carried through the small room, wrapping them both in something they didn't dare name yet. It was peace, maybe. Or maybe the beginning of something they had stopped believing in. Eli built a small fire. The flame danced slow, throwing soft light over two people who had nearly lost their place in the world. The crackle of wood filled the silence between them. She handed him his coffee tin, warm and black. "Guess I got used to the taste," she said. He chuckled. "Guess you did." Days turned into weeks. Her wound healed, and the nightmares began to fade. She walked a little farther each morning, and the pain answered her with smaller steps. She learned to ride, to rope, and to laugh again. Sometimes her laughter startled the horses, and Eli found himself smiling without meaning to. The cabin that once echoed with silence now held the sound of life again. Even Widow wagged her tail more these days, as if she finally trusted joy to stay. Eli fixed the old porch, hung a wind chime made from empty shells. When the wind blew, it sang like tiny prayers over the valley. One morning, they rode to the small chapel in Tucson. No music, no crowd, just a simple promise to stay and protect each other. The priest said only 4 words, Love is quiet work. Eli never forgot that. The priest smiled. Sometimes love doesn't need to be loud. Sometimes it just needs to be steady. That night, back at the cabin, Nora placed her bottle of orange blossom beside his worn belt of leather. 2 cents, once worlds apart, now lived under one roof. Eli looked out the window. The sky stretched wide and endless. He whispered, maybe second chances don't come easy. But when they do, you hold on tight. Nora took his hand and said, and you never let go. The story of Eli and Nora isn't about luck. It's about standing when life knocks you down. It's about finding something worth fighting for, even when the odds are ugly. Maybe you've been through your own storm too. Maybe you've carried scars no one else can see. Maybe you've loved and lost and then built yourself again from pieces you didn't know you had. Maybe you've had to stitch yourself back together more than once. But like Eli, maybe your next sunrise is closer than you think. So take a deep breath. Pour yourself a cup of tea. Look out your window and tell me, what would you fight for if the world pushed you to the edge? If this story touched you, give it a like. And if you want more tales from the Wild West, where every scar has a story and every story has a heart, hit that subscribe button and stay a while. Because sometimes the wildest places hide the gentlest love. And if you're still here listening, maybe that gentle love is something you've been chasing too.